in the show. So let me start out.
Oh, dear.
And we're going to have Scott join us. Scott Wilson's coming in a few minutes late, and then Case Keefer from the Las Vegas Sun will be joining us whenever. We're just going to pipe him in. So let's roll. Here we go. 3, 2, and 1. Welcome. I'm Nolan Dalla with Matt Lessinger, my co-host. This is a fantastic show we have coming up for probably 90 minutes or so. We're going to do the only show that I know of that focuses almost entirely on propositions. In other words, Super Bowl props, all those hundreds, if not thousands of possible bets you can make offshore, here in Las Vegas, and now around the country legally. There are props everywhere, and especially on the Super Bowl. We have one of the best guests on this topic, Nick Christenson here from Las Vegas joining us. We're going to have Scott Wilson, who's a high-stakes bettor from Vancouver, British Columbia, shortly, and then the man himself from the Las Vegas Sun later in the show, Case Keefer. So if you're just joining us, get a cup of coffee or grab a cold beer or a glass of wine, because we're going to be here a while and we'll try to take some questions. We have a lot to discuss. We're doing this totally on the fly. Let's back up for a moment, Nick, you and I, let's talk for a moment, because you and I have talked and argued for the better part of a decade over Super Bowl props. Let me just come out and ask you, is there any value to betting props now that they've already been out for 4 or 5 days? What do you think?
Well, there can be. Well, first of all, it's been the better part of 2 decades. I hate to tell you, Nolan, but we are old. But that's how long we've been pounding on this stuff. The answer to your question is a little bit tricky because it requires some context. Back in the old days when you and I were really active in these props, and I remember, between 10 and 15 years ago, I would have between half and 3/4 of my active bankroll just on Super Bowl props. Going into the Super Bowl, and those days are gone, and we'll talk about that a little bit more going forward. There's still places where you can make bets, but the candy store is closed. Back in those days, the bookmakers would put up props early, and sometimes there would be mistakes, and sometimes you'd have differences of opinions, and so on and so forth. And there were a lot of folks used to line up at the Westgate. You were there, I was there, to get in on these props. We'd cycle through the line several times, make the bets that we wanted to make. And what would happen was the line over the course of the week and a half before the Super Bowl would start to sharpen. And then on the Saturday before the Super Bowl, or maybe the Friday night, the quote unquote squares would get into town, and then they would come in and dull those lines again. And then we could find some good places to pick off on game day. In the meantime, we would go around to each of the books as they set their opening lines and pick off their mistakes. That doesn't happen anymore, and for a bunch of reasons. The big one is that we've got, the 2 big ones are the books know what they're doing now, setting these lines. You don't see those huge mistakes anymore. They've gotten good. Jay and his crew at the Westgate have been good for a long time, but even the other sports books that used to copy down Jay's lines and miscopy them. And
you're talking about Jay Cornegie, the manager at the Westgate. Yeah. Absolutely.
Correct. They used to copy his lines and make mistakes on them, and then we used to go pick those off. That just doesn't happen anymore. The books have too much experience doing this stuff to get those things way wrong. You still find those things once in a while, but it's no longer worth my time going around and trying to hunt those down. They're just not that common anymore. But the other thing is that we're betting on these apps. I mean, we've got, my phone with about a dozen different just Las Vegas, Nevada betting apps on it. I don't have to walk around from book to book and find these outlier things. I can scan through them a couple times a day, every day. So that means these numbers are far more dynamic, and people aren't waiting for them to get way out of whack before they bet them back in, because it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to go and do that. So the combination of those things smooths out the lines in the way that it didn't before. The bookmakers are willing to take stands on bets where they know the odds are because they have so much experience now. So they're not swinging them wild, sharp early and then swinging them back square later nearly as much as they used to. They're just opening them and letting most of them ride because they know where those numbers are supposed to be. So it's much less true now than it was then that there are sharp times and square times for the sports betting markets.
Matt, you used to come into Las Vegas and bet a lot of these props. And I know we're going to do a future show on the Grammy Awards because you have, everybody here has a niche. That's the cool thing. I mean, you guys are experts on this. And that's why, again, I think people will tune in because you guys kind of have the goods here. But you live in California, Matt. Are you able to bet these props? Or I know this is not a foreign language to you entirely, is it?
No, and I mean, can I bet some? Yeah, in a quasi-legal manner, I suppose so. So I could always call a friend in Vegas if something looks extra juicy. I just want to give a quick anecdote from a prop betting perspective. You're on Facebook. You know how sometimes we get reminders from, this was your status 7 years ago. So apparently 7 years ago was when the Red Hot Chili Peppers performed at halftime. And there was one prop was, will any of the band members be shirtless at any point during the halftime show at plus 150. And I think that's the most I've ever bet on a non-sports prop like that. And it cashed the second they started because Flea never wore a shirt. I don't think Flea owns a shirt. So I think I collected $750 before they even started the halftime show. So that was my memory from 7 years ago, and I can reflect on that now because, as Nick said, there's nothing nearly that good lying around anymore.
Well, they say, why do you bet the coin flip, or why do you bet the national anthem? Well, you can be on a free roll technically, and they haven't even kicked off yet, right? Hey, let me welcome in Case Keefer. Case, I'm so glad to see you on the air, on our show. For those who are joining us and recognize this gentleman, good-looking man who just joined us. He's the sports gambling, really casino beat writer for the best newspaper in Las Vegas, which is the Las Vegas Sun. And I'm going to tell you something, Case, your work is really exceptional. You have done some great work on props, and every week you stick your ass out there, put on a line. I think you win almost every year. Welcome to the show, Case Keefer.
Thanks a lot for all the kind words, Nolan. An honor to be here with you guys. It's weird in these times. I feel like I've talked about the Super Bowl less with other people since we're so separated. So I'm glad to hear some sharp opinions and kind of see how you guys are seeing this thing play out.
Well, I know you have a big thing coming out in the Sun here. You mentioned offline that you and please go online to the Las Vegas Sun, Case Keefer, and you have a big, all your props and recommendations will be coming on, I think, Thursday. Hopefully you'll throw us a bone or two early in the week. Let me ask our panel, all three of you, a question. It's COVID. We have a completely different preparation, a different stadium atmosphere. What is it going to be, 15, 20,000 fans? Tampa's at home. Well, I guess they kind of are at home. Let's discuss Super Bowl in the age of COVID and how this might, if it affects it all, Super Bowl, and particularly Super Bowl betting. Who wants to field that one first?
I mean, this is sort of a non-answer answer, but it's like I really had no idea how to weight the home field advantage. Just the combination of it's so rare for the Super Bowl to be hosted by one of the teams, combined with what you said, that there's going to be, enough fans to make a difference, but how many of them are going to be homers and how many of them are going to be just people that were going to travel to the Super Bowl anyway. So I certainly defer to smarter minds than mine. Like, how would you guys weight the home field advantage in this situation?
I'm feeling a little hypocritical with this question because all year, especially late in the year in the playoffs, I've been banging the drum of home field does not matter in the NFL this year. I mean, every data point we have, everything put together has said that there's no home field advantage this year. And I hadn't really been, using it all or just minimal in certain situations. But I think the Super Bowl, you could technically, because of what's going on with travel, Kansas City not getting there till late, I could see it mattering just a little bit for Tampa Bay. I mean, I certainly there's no way you're coming up with an edge for Kansas City. There's no way it's going to be as normal as usual. So I'm not necessarily, ready to say Tampa Bay deserves a normal year, going back a couple years home field adjustment. But if that's worth a half point, it wouldn't shock me if that turns out to be the case. I kind of like I guess not to spoil everything, but I kind of like Tampa Bay at the number now anyway in the game. And I think there's a lot of little things like this that are kind of leaning a little bit more in their direction. I think you add up a lot of these little factors, and there might be a little edge on Tampa Bay in some of these things.
Well, Nolan knows that I will go off on the topic of home field advantage ad nauseum as much as anybody will. I've done a huge study of it. Case is absolutely correct that this year the numbers say in the NFL that home field advantage has not meant very much at all, if anything. It's been essentially the problems with that are, number one, a home field did normalize in Major League Baseball this year and ended up being a fairly normal sort of looking home field advantage. So that's just a different stat and an outlier. We've seen a home field advantage. If you take a look at the stats early in conference basketball in the NCAA and in the NBA. So it may be that the NFL is just an outlier this year. It's really hard to tell this stuff. If you think there's something special about the NFL that has limited the home field advantage, well, then that's fine. My guess is it's at least part of an anomaly, and my feeling is that home field advantage is better off averaged between the four major sports that the effect that we've seen on them, not counting the NBA or NHL in the bubble, because obviously it's a whole different situation, rather than just going with what we've seen in the NFL. And so, do I feel confident in my number for home field advantage for this game? No, not at all. But I've got to put a number in there in order to do my handicapping. And I put 1.5 in as the number for the home field advantage for Tampa Bay. And, the combination, as Case was talking about with Tampa Bay, if you believe that the regular season numbers affecting your power ratings are important or valuable or meaningful, and you believe in that, 1.5, 2 points worth of home field advantage for Tampa Bay, you had to be looking at Tampa Bay, +3, plus 100, or +3.5, minus 120, whatever it is that you're getting there, as the right side. The question is, do we believe that the Kansas City's power rating from the regular season means more than the power rating from the playoffs? I don't think anybody knows the answer to the question. But if you want to weight it at all towards what happened in the regular season, then Kansas City was the Tampa Bay is absolutely the right side. And that's why I played +3.5, minus 110 at the opener, which you would know if you follow Nolan Dalla on Facebook, because we had that conversation there.
Let me hit this a little harder. Nick, this is right back to you, and then the panel is going to discuss it, hopefully. You and I were talking that very night of the championship games as Kansas City was spiking the last touchdown. We were hypothetically talking about a line, and we had not seen what was coming out. And let's suppose this game, though, was played. I'm just going to make up what I call the ultimate neutral Super Bowl site, Dome in New Orleans. If this game was in the Superdome, you're saying 1.5, Nick? I'm going to challenge you. Are you saying that this game was in New Orleans, it would have been Kansas City -5? You understand my point?
Well, I mean, I'm not 100% sure what the books were telling us is the send out. Based on the market right now, assuming the market agrees with me on home field, and it's not at all clear that they do, then the line would be 4.5. Yeah. Is that should I take that to the bank? Absolutely not. I don't have any idea what the market thinks home field should be. My best guess is it's worth 1.5 points in this scenario, but I don't think anybody knows. I don't think anybody that I trust is confident on what that number is.
What do you say home field is worth, Case?
Like I kind of hinted, I'm kind of going with 0.5 point is where I landed. I mean, it seems like Nick's done a lot more work on this, and I might see to him, hey, I like he has it worth even more. But I thought 0.5 point, and I thought my kind of true number on this game was right around 2, maybe. You could convince me 2.5, and then you get the extra 0.5 point. And I hope I'm not ruining the show by having so much harmony here, but I'm right with Nick. I bet 3.5 minus 110 at open too. I did have a pre-existing position on Kansas City. I bet them in futures market before the year at 6-1. So I have a little middle there, but I wouldn't be hedging just to hedge. I mean, I think there's value on the 3.5 number. So I really agree with a lot of what Nick is saying.
Mr. Lessinger?
Well, I guess I just had questions, I guess, because both of you guys clearly are on the Tampa side. And just as I wasn't sure how much weight to put on home field advantage, I guess I'm not sure what kind of weight to put on things like Tampa had to play the extra game. They had to travel twice, twice or three times.
3 times in a row. Yeah.
3 times in a row
Yeah.
that they've had to travel.
Washington, New Orleans, and Green Bay.
Right, they traveled to Washington. That's right. So 3 times in a row, combined with Tom Brady's age, and I know he seems ageless, but I mean, there should be a little bit extra wear and tear, whereas Kansas City had the bye week. Not knowing what kind of weight to give those things, but so right now I just throw them out there as intangibles. Despite those, you still think Tampa Bay is the right side. So clearly, you're not giving that too much weight. Is that my understanding to both of you?
Yeah, well, yeah, mostly. I mean, here's the deal. My power ratings, which I trust strongly, you overweight the most recent games compared to the old games, but the old games matter to me. And the power rating I had based upon a neutral field for this Super Bowl was less than 3. Was basically Kansas City 1.5, somewhere in there. And so then when I see you got the home field advantage plus you're giving me 3.5 points, I've got to take a position on that. And so I did. I mean, we've seen teams in the past go on the road from the wild card spot and win the 3 straight, get the 2 weeks off before the Super Bowl, which is huge, and then go on to win it. We saw Pittsburgh do it.
Right?
We've seen the Giants do it in the story that Nolan and I can relate to you sometime if you want to laugh at us. So that stuff has happened before. And I think that 2 weeks off really nullifies all the problems of the 3 weeks in a row.
Okay.
But again, this is just guesswork on this sort of stuff. But it's not like this would be unprecedented.
Case, how about you? Yeah.
He hit on the biggest thing for me too, is the 2 weeks off. I mean, if you're talking a back-to-back 4 straight road games, I think certainly there should be an adjustment from that. And obviously we're not working with a huge sample or anything, but traditionally, and I think you even look at some of the regular season bye weeks. I mean, once you have a week off and you've had 2 weeks no travel, that's not something that really concerns me. I'm trying to think of some of the other things you brought up. Brady's age. I mean, clearly, I think I don't have the quarterback edge in this game, but I think he's been playing extremely well. It does concern me that I think I'm, picking against the team that has the quarterback and the coaching edge. But I think you really look at every other factor. I think almost every other factor I'd have in Tampa Bay's favor. So I guess I'm hoping that's enough to kind of drown out what I would normally consider, 2 of the biggest things to look at.
Let's talk about things that could happen between today, and we're recording this, what is today, Tuesday? So we're recording this 5 days before the Super Bowl, which is played on Sunday. Let's just suppose that this forecast, weather, becomes is accurate. If you recall, about 8 or 9 years ago, there was a game played in Jacksonville. It was the rain game where Peyton Manning with the Colts won his only Super Bowl, beating the Bears. That was played in a driving rainstorm. Well, that's not quite the conditions that we expect, but that could be the conditions. Let's suppose there's a driving rainstorm in Tampa. By the way, forecast, Sunday, thunderstorms, 70% chance of rain, 74 degrees at game time, nice weather, but a driving rainstorm. Does that change, obviously we're going to be watching the weather, does that change in any way who you'd be picking in this game?
For me, not much. I mean, for me in weather, and involved in handicapping, the one thing I'm looking at for wins and specifically crosswinds. When you don't have wins and crosswinds, there aren't a whole lot of things that bother me that much. It does affect some things in terms of the props, though, and we'll get to some of our specific props a little bit later on. And for me, one in particular comes out as a consequence of, at least partial consequence of the weather report. But other than that, it doesn't play too much in my thinking about the particulars of the game. Although it might do, we might see some other props. There's another one that Matt likes that's probably affected by this as well.
Should I spill the beans on that, or are we holding off for now?
Far away, Matt.
I think Nick and I had discussed that we both are leaning towards interceptions taking place in this game. The lines that I saw, so these are opening lines, and from what Nick shared, it sounds like people are on the same side, believing that interceptions are going to take place. Brady throwing an interception was minus 140. Mahomes throwing an interception was was plus 155. And for both teams combined, over 1.5 interceptions was plus 140. That particular one is now down to either plus 115 or plus 120. I happen to like all three of those. And certainly the weather report does nothing to dissuade me from that, because one, tipped ball and then boom, you got your interception. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Nick. I think looking at pretty much all the other props, all you're really caring about is wind. But when you get to interceptions, absolutely the wetness could play a factor.
We're going to bring Scott Wilson in here in just 1 second. He's chomping at the bit. Case Keefer, you get to address that the weather issue.
Yeah, I mean, as you guys know, it seems like the weather forecast changed so much. So I really, especially in a game this big, I'll try to circle back Friday or Saturday and maybe get a better idea, have a better probability of what's going to happen. But as far as the side, it doesn't really, change much to me. I'm going to be, riding with Tampa either way. The winds would be concerning if there was a wind pickup. I hadn't really thought about the interception. I'm kind of with you guys on one of them and against you on another. I thought the Brady number was awfully high for him to throw an interception with the way he's played, except for the last game, the second half of the season. So yeah, I guess also to summarize, not a big factor to me.
All right, welcome to the show. They call him the line mover. He's from Vancouver, British Columbia. He usually talks hockey, but this guy's got action every night of the week because I always connect with him. Welcome to the show, Scott Wilson.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, most of the action these days is on Wall Street bets. I'm not sure if you guys have addressed that yet, but it's been keeping me up or getting me up early in the morning Pacific time at unusual hours lately. So I've been all over that.
How's that working out for you?
Yeah, I mean, hey, we're building a bankroll for the weekend, right? But it's all the same to me. Just if it happens before 4 p.m. Eastern or after 4 p.m. Eastern, it's still the same game. We're just trying to make some money and get the heartbeat going.
24 hours
not
a
a
day.
long-term investor in it.
24 hours a day. NBA,
Always.
NHL, football, and Wall Street, and probably the Tokyo markets too. All right, you came in a little late there, Scott Wilson. Everyone spilled the beans on who they like early. I'm talking about just the line at Tampa, really kind of 3.5. Have you already bet this game?
I like Tampa 3.5, only because I just, it's Brady, and he's not playing Manning, so he's probably pretty good for the rest of it, right? I mean, he beat my Seahawks. I witnessed one of those in the end zone of whatever that was, 6 years ago. Went to both those events, but first one finished better than the second one. I just think it just feels to me that this is going to be up to the defense of Tampa, because they're both going to score. They're going to be firing out there. I see one of the props I'm looking at that I like is Brady and Mahomes to each score 3 TDs or more, and it's like
Sorry,
plus
you mean
300 or
you mean
more
you
than
mean
that, actually.
You mean pass for 3? Is that what you mean? You mean pass for 3?
Yes. Yeah. That's So each of them to pass for 3. I like that. However, I might hedge a little bit because I think the Tampa Bay defense is going to surprise people here. I don't know why I think that. That's really not a calculated thing. It's what we call in the business a hunch. I think the safeties are going to be a big deal. Hopefully those guys are, they've got what they need in there. And there's also a Canadian fellow on offense from Quebec, northern Quebec, from a small town, who's a real good blocking tight end. Maybe they'll throw him the ball once or as a decoy, and we'll see what happens there. Something to surprise anyway. I just feel like Tampa's gonna pull this out somehow. But the 3.5 I love ahead of the 3. The 3 I was waiting for it to move, and the money, you could see that the payout line was moving, and said, okay, well, we'll just wait for that. So I'm a Tampa guy.
I have to ask you, Nick, start out this conversation, this next part of the thread here. You and I, again, go back many, many years. You've discussed this, but I don't know if you've ever discussed it on any kind of a show. So if you're out there listening to listen to this next couple of minutes, and everybody else, please chime in. Sucker bets. What are the biggest sucker bets that the betting public makes, especially on props in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are a couple of general trends on these props that you can just look at. This is less good information now than it was a long time ago because, again, the lines are sharper. The bookmakers are not moving off of good lines. They're willing to take one-sided action on these things. Sometimes I think to their detriment, but we can go into that a little bit more later if anybody cares about that. But you see a lot of these sort of bets where you've got plus 140, minus 165 sort of things. Anything in the minus where the true or the median number is in the 130 to 200 range, the minus side is almost always going to be the better bet. It's almost always going to lean that way. That's just the way they structure these things to try to sucker folks into playing the plus sides of those monies. Because they're thinking, hey, I think this is a 50-50 thing, and I'm getting plus money on this when you're really not. The ultimate one of these is the 3 scores in a row. But here's the deal. These guys have gotten wise to this. Matt and I remember the days when we used to go up to the windows on game day and play, will it be 3 scores in a row? Yes, minus 140. Yes, minus 135. Those days are long gone. Those things are opening now at, plus 170 with minus 200, minus 210 take back on the other side. And they're not moving them. They're willing to take that one-sided action on those. So the minus 200 side of that, minus 190 if you can get it, is still the better deal, but it's not a candy store anymore, like I was saying earlier. So those things are much harder to get. But basically, the other thing is it used to be the case, and still is in some sense, is there's a lot of overweighting on what you saw recently. You remember, I was telling Matt about this. You remember the Super Bowl with the Broncos and Panthers. Luke Kuechly had 2 interceptions in the playoffs coming into that game. I got no interception for Luke Kuechly, a linebacker, at minus 240 to minus 280 in a bunch of different places. That's ridiculous.
That should be priced at what, minus 500 or something, right? Somewhere
I
up
would
there.
say 600, 700.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a linebacker getting an interception, maybe even higher than that.
Yeah.
As a fair price, but folks had moved that down, and the public was taking only one side of that. And that was fairly recently. That was a few years ago. That was after the candy store had closed, but still where there's some good bets that way. This year, though, I looked over the sheet, and there aren't a lot of them like that. For example, Tyrann Mathieu had a big playoffs. A lot of people looking at him. His number for an interception is minus 400, minus 420. That's not completely ridiculous. That's still the much better side than the plus side. But it's, again, not nearly as good as it was. But again, folks who had the great playoffs bet against them in the Super Bowl. And those things that look like sucker lines, that look like coin flips where you're getting plus money, the minus side is almost always at least the better bet, even if it's not plus EV.
And anecdotally, just like the one you mentioned with the 3 scores in a row, the one that jumped to mind for me was the shortest touchdown of the game, over under 1.5 yards, right? And that used to be a lot closer to even money, and under is the play, even though people are like, oh, is it, all they have to do is not score from the 1 yard line, but it happens. So now the line is minus 170 for under 1.5 yards. And I think, like you said, they're not moving it because now.
You're absolutely right, Matt. Still the better bet, but not a good bet.
Right. I'm not touching it for what it's worth, but just that's something that I remember being able to bet with a little bit of confidence.
And I missed out on some of these, the heyday. I didn't realize that the 3 in a row was ever minus 140. I remember getting like a 160, 180, maybe feeling good about it. One area I'd add that Nick kind of talked about with the defensive players that I noticed this year. I mean, I agree. I just think that these props are getting more efficient across the board. One thing I filed my first prop column. I think every single year I've gone with the biggest name defensive player under tackles. It was like it was kind of a giving tree as well. I think I remember one year it cashed like 5 or 6 years in a row. And this year, actually, I looked at every player I could find, at least with the Westgate, which I was using for the column, and all those numbers seemed really sharp and right on. I think that's another thing where some of these places where we've gone for value year after year are kind of drying up, because I just always thought that the public kind of inflated how easy it was to get a tackle. And some of those tackles numbers in past years were just ridiculous. And this year I didn't really see much an edge on any of them.
Yeah, nose tackles, over under 1.5 tackles for the game. You'll want to go under. Because those guys are always getting double teamed. And even the great nose tackles have a huge influence on the play, but almost never get tackles. So that's another one. Again, the market is sharpened up that way. I mean, just to give you an example of that as to how bad this has gotten at times, and Nolan remembers the story. I remember back during the candy store days, going around, my last stop before heading out to meet up with a bunch of friends and watch the Super Bowl. I'm at a sports book. It is half hour before kickoff. I'm looking up at the board and I see, will there be overtime? Yes, no, with the no at minus 525. I go up to the window and say, I want to bet, list the number. The person says, how much do you want to bet? And I paused for a moment and said, everything I've got on me. Pulled my bankroll out, slapped it on the counter, pulled my grocery money out of my wallet, slapped it on the counter, reached into the pocket for my change, put it on the counter, count it up. I want to bet this.
You had $7.21 on it.
So a little bit more than that. But anyways, that may be the from an edge perspective, the best bet I've ever made in my life. Those don't exist anymore. Right now, the best number in the last 7 years I've ever bet on no overtime has been minus 800. And here, I mean, I can tell you right now, at William Hill, it has the best number in town at minus 900 on the no overtime. Station plus 700 minus 1100. Westgate plus 900 minus 1600. Rampart plus 650 minus 1K, or the South Point number. I mean, these, again, the no side is still far and away the better side of these bets, except for at the Westgate where it's about right. But the candy store is closed on these things.
Yeah, I know that I'll use one of Case Keefer's most frequent phrases in that small sample size. But hey, we have 54 Super Bowls. There's been one that's gone in overtime in the entire. Now this is a line. It's a close line game. It's 3.5, but so that should add a little bit of weight. But yeah, it should be at least probably double. Yeah, for sure. So the one more, Nick, let me run this by you and get everybody else on this too. One of the props that I've always made money on, and that's because of you, something you identified maybe around 2004 or 5, and that was, will there be more points scored? Case, I think you were on this too in your column. Will there be more points scored in the second half than the first half? And the reason is, the teams start out a little bit conservative and then things open up, and then especially if there's catch up or a lot of turnovers and people go crazy, the coaches and players go crazy in the second half and it flies over. That doesn't always happen, but it tends to be a good bet. Is it a good bet this year, you think?
I think it's a good bet. I'd be interested if there's a sports book out there that has it. I was looking around and couldn't find one. And those things have also shifted a lot. Most of them now are at least requiring you to lay a half point on the second half versus the first half, which is a lot closer to fair bet. But yeah, I had done Super Bowls back to the beginning, and about 65% of them had more points scored in the second half than the first half. And the reasons for it are pretty easy to understand. One is that, of course, in the regular season, the first half scoring versus second half scoring is pretty close to balanced. A little bit more in the second half, probably due to overtimes, but not a whole lot of difference. But in the regular season, you've got games where essentially both teams have quit in the fourth quarter, and that never happens in the Super Bowl. You've also got the problem in the Super Bowl where these teams, especially if they're not veteran, end up being really keyed up. And so, they get exhausted. They blow out oftentimes in the first half. And then there's nothing in the tank for the second half. And defenses get tired faster than offenses in football. And so you can see where it can turn into an absolute shootout in the second half. Again, I think this stuff is better known now in the NFL, so there's less chance of it. But yeah, anytime somebody wants to give me even money on which half is the more points going to be scored, I'm going to take the second half. But Case, I'd be really interested in hearing if you've seen that at the books around town, because I haven't been able to find that.
Yeah, I I hadn't even thought about it, or I don't think I've seen it this year either. I mean, this is another famous thing in the NBA too. I think 10 years ago, is the second half was never priced, and it was always more points in the second half. I know the market's kind of trended towards efficiency now, and it's more balanced. It's kind of out of the number, but I guess it's narrative from my point. But even though I haven't seen it or given much thought to it this year, I don't know that this is a game where I would be, jumping at the bit to get involved in that. I don't know, maybe it was like Scott was saying, he just has a hunch. I kind of feel like there's going to be some points early on, not to say that precludes the second half from being more scoring. I keep hearing so many people talk about Brady's slow starts in the Super Bowl, which I think means little to nothing. I have seen a few numbers that I thought were a little low. I think, Tampa's team total in the first half, I think I saw somewhere it was even like a juiced 6, which I thought was what was ridiculous. So I think there's going to be some points early. I think there's going to be some points in general with this game. I'm kind of having a crisis of confidence. I think I've liked the under in 5 straight Super Bowls thinking back, and I'm not, in a hurry to jump on any unders in this game. And if anything, I might be looking for points early and a little bit of a change.
Nick, it's not exactly the same as the bet you were alluding to, but for example, there's a line on total first half touchdowns by both teams, which is lined at 3, and then total second half touchdowns is lined at 3.5.
Yep.
So that pretty much knocks out any advantage.
Exactly right. And there are a bunch of synthetic ways you can go about making these sorts of bets. But if you take a look at, with a total of 56.5 for the game right now, the first half total is 27.5. I mean, that's telling you really what you need to know about these sorts of things. If the game total stays at 56.5 and that total can get to 28, I'm going to look at the under on that. And certainly if it gets to 28.5. But that's about the sort of the way I'm looking at playing this right now, if I play it at all, because I haven't seen this particular bet on the board. But Nolan remembers, I used to bet this very bet, year after year after year for pretty close to a decade. I called it old reliable, and it went something like 7-3 over that span.
Let me throw another intangible at you, and then we'll get back to the props. And today it was announced that Tampa Bay will be wearing their white uniforms. They had the option to wear either the dark jerseys or the white jerseys. Now, by the way, I can't believe this actually has never been researched. I was not able to find the actual NFL record for white teams either winning and losing outright, point spreads, white jerseys versus dark jerseys. By the way, I think there is something statistical to again, this is just another hunch. We use that word. The reason the home teams generally wear white is because if everything else being equal, a lot of movement, it's easier to see a white jersey, moving around versus say a red jersey or a blue jersey, what have you. Same thing if you get a fastball in the major leagues. Why is the center field bleachers, why is it blacked out? Because you can see that white ball coming at you at 90 miles an hour. Same principle, by the way. Is this a big thing? No. But when you're looking for every single edge, it could be a factor. Let me read some stats to you. You tell me if I'm full of S or you think there's anything to this. Tampa chose to wear the white jerseys I mentioned. They're undefeated wearing their white jerseys this season, 5-0. The Chiefs will be wearing the red jerseys this season. They went 8-2, but the only 2 losses they had, they're wearing the red jerseys. Does it mean anything at all?
I like the sound of it. I would have to say no. I would lean towards no, but anything like that I can throw on it and say maybe it plays a factor. I have heard the white jersey thing before, and maybe it was wise of them to choose that. But if you're making me take a yes or no on that prop, I'd have to go with the no.
Man, I'm crushed. I'm crushed. Scott Wilson, bail me out.
It seems suspiciously like looking at the roulette wheel and looking at the number. We got a bunch of reds in a row. Hello, black. No, it doesn't work that way.
It's on a roll. No, it's due. Nolan, I don't know for a fact that you're full of shit, but I'm sure leaning that way.
I'm not making up the stats.
No, it's the question of, is there something to it?
Okay. All right. Matt Lessinger, you're my co-host on the show, sir. Are we gonna go down on the ship together?
I'm going to abstain from this one. I love Nick's example of like, oh, it's a trend. Oh, it's due. Yeah, that's what it feels like.
I
All
also
right.
saw today they're not going to be shooting the cannon from the pirate ship though, so you got to take that into account. That might play against that boost after a touchdown.
All right. Now that I've been, go ahead, Nick.
The lack of fumes from the cannon is going to have everyone's breathing better in the second half. That's going to help defenses.
All right. Now that you guys have shot down my theory, it's been nice being with you. I'm Nolan Dalla. We'll see you next week. All right, let's talk some props, gentlemen. I know, Nick, you were saying that everybody squeezed the juice out of the lemon, but hey, we're going to get down some. We got to have action. I mean, let's go down the line, and anybody that wants to bring up things that they're looking at or leaning at. Case, I'm going to throw it to you first because, man, you got to throw us a bone. I know you got your big column coming out in the Las Vegas Sun. Throw us a bone early so everybody will read that on Thursday.
Well, this might go along the lines of what we've been talking about. I actually didn't write about this, but I think for the last several years, one of my my main strategies was a lot of these player props waiting until Sunday morning, kind of different than any other props, and going under, because I thought, especially at some of the books that Nick had mentioned, they had been driven up, and there was value on the under. I'm a little bit more wary of that this year, but I think there's still going to be some opportunities of that, especially. You look back at the first game, I think both Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce just had gigantic games, and some of their numbers already seem just a little huge to me, but I think you hold off a little bit more, and maybe you get, at some of these spots, you get 3 or 4 more yards or something like that on like a Tyreek Hill under. So I'm going to be going back to the well for that. I'm not going to be betting unders maybe as heavily as I have in the past years, but I would wait till Sunday and go under on some of these big names. I think that's been another old reliable thing to do.
Let me. I just want to make sure we get the obvious here. You're betting it because you think the public's going to flood the window and maybe move the lines up a little bit, and you get a few extra points. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I just think a lot of these unders, if you're inclined to go that way, you're going to get a better price on Sunday if you hold off.
Touchdown scorers, because even the two guys you mentioned, Tyreek Hill and Kelce, they're both in Canadian terms 1.66. So you just, up in Canada, we often look at the odds instead of the plus 100 minus, plus 100, that's going to be even, but we use a decimal system on it, so you can add it from there, I guess, plus 165 if you want to call it that way. Actually, no, that'd be minus. See, this is the problem with this stuff. That's minus 135 is what that is for Tyreek Hill or Kelce to score a touchdown anytime. It seems like both of those. Kelce just seems like that's free money, doesn't it? Minus 135. I'll be on that. And I'm enjoying looking through and seeing, touchdowns anytime. Leonard Fournette's plus 120. I've got Edwards-Helaire plus 180. I don't know. Is there anybody in there that's an unlikely touchdown scorer that we should be looking at, do you think?
I just, as a hunch play,
Yes.
It seems to me that Brady leans on his tight ends a lot in Super Bowls. And since Gronkowski's sort of trending down, I like the Cameron Brate props. I think Cameron Brate was like plus or 20-1 to score the first touchdown of the game, 10-1 to score the first touchdown for Tampa. I've got him over 26.5 yards. I've got him at 4-1 to score any touchdown, which is what you were describing. I could totally
pretty close to my numbers on him, but I got plus 2,200 for him to get the first touchdown. But that's just individual bookmaking at that point.
Yeah, and he could totally put up a goose egg, But so it's just a hunch. But I think Brady doesn't, unless he's behind by 2 or 3 touchdowns, which is entirely possible in a game like this. He doesn't really look to air it out. He sort of does like a more controlled offense, dink and dunk to used to be Edelman. Now you might lean more on the tight ends. That's just a hunch.
We know everyone's going to be getting it on the first touchdown score, and you mentioned I like some of the Tampa Bay prices in there that they're higher, and I think there's a good chance the Buccaneers score first here. Bruce Arians, one of the few coaches that hasn't always deferred the coin toss either, so there's a chance they get the ball first. I think statistically, running backs are a little more likely to score the first touchdown than any other touchdown in the game. So maybe you shop around. You could probably find a good price on Ronald Jones now because he hasn't been, he's not kind of the hot name with playoff Lenny, Leonard Fournette taking over. But I'm going to be looking at some of those guys. I think I'll build I'll be grabbing a few Buccaneers to score the first touchdown for sure. I think that's where you can find some value in that market.
Can I ask you guys about a prop that I saw on your send out, Nolan, from the Westgate numbers? And maybe I'm thinking about this incorrectly because anyway. The jersey number of the player to score the first touchdown, over under 17.5. So basically, if a quarterback or a wide receiver gets it, then it's the under, and a running back or a tight end is over, or a defensive player is over. And it's even, it's 110 on both sides. Instinctively, I feel like the over is the play. I don't know if I'm considering it correctly, though.
I don't know. I haven't run those numbers this year. I mean, there was a time in the past when, again, during the candy store days, when finding errors like that were worth a lot of money. And I used to actually go through the rosters of the teams, figure out, what the percentage of that team's touchdowns they scored, and make a big chart and find out where the median number is on both teams based on which team was most likely to score, and actually do the calculations that I'm sure Jay Sherman at the Westgate has done in order to come up with this particular prop. Jay Sherman is really good at this. I don't expect that there's a lot of value on this. I trust his ability to make that line well enough that I'm not going to expend the energy to try to break it. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't, that he didn't make a big screw up here, that everybody is in my bed and not bothering to take a look at that stuff anymore, is just completely missing. That's possible. But my instinct is that knowing the folks at the Westgate like I do, that's probably a pretty good number.
I mean, I didn't go through it with a fine-tooth comb, but I just went basically like looking at the odds of players to score first touchdown. And I mean, the running back, Kelsey is favored,
Yep.
right? And then you go to the running backs. I mean, so basically Mike Evans is like the fourth choice, and he's the only one that's under the number. I don't know. It's just eyeballing it. I hear what you're saying. I just going player by player. It's hard to figure how that could be evenly weighted at 17.5. Anybody else have a thought on that, just off the top of your head?
Yeah, no, gut reaction. I think I'm with you, but I'm kind of I don't know. I'd like to see some numbers or run something with that. And a lot of those props, I know there's value there. I just don't really have the effort or the time to go through, some of these more novelty ones and find out. And I don't really like going with my gut reaction just on something like that. Maybe if you're putting down a few dollars just for fun, but I'm with you, but I can't see myself getting involved.
Let me run something by you guys called, I'll call this the head fake. You're looking this way, but really the value is over here. I'll give you a head fake bet that I've been thinking about, and I actually have bet it already. And I hate to bet, with the public, a popular prop bet. I really just hate doing this. But if we like Tampa to cover the 3.5, well, we probably like them, on the money line as well. Now, generally speaking, that there's value there. In other words, if they're going to cover 3.5, there's some decent chance they just win the game outright. I don't think anybody would be shocked if Tampa wins this game. Now it's plus 145-ish on the money line, somewhere in there. I've seen it 150, maybe a couple of real outliers, and then 140. Now here's the other prop that's out there. Tom Brady to win most valuable player. The Super Bowl, of course, awards a most valuable player. Is it really conceivable that the Buccaneers, I want to say the Patriots, the Buccaneers win the Super Bowl and Tom Brady is not going to be standing there also collecting the MVP trophy? Of course it's possible, but you're getting an extra 45 cents or whatever on this. If you like Tampa to win the game, shouldn't you just bet Tom Brady and get the extra 45 cents? What do you think of that kind of what I call value priced wagering with regard to props?
Well, there have been years where that's certainly been the case, where it's almost certain that the quarterback of the winning team is going to win the MVP, and in those cases, making those sort of bets as a sort of synthetic money line bet make a lot of sense. In this case, I mean, as Case talked about earlier, and I think he's right, or at least, well, let me say, I hate making storylines for games, because they almost always turn out to be wrong. But but it's certainly very plausible that if Tampa Bay wins this game outright, it's riding on their defense. It's their defense making stops. It's people going, oh man, Mahomes was just shut down this game. And then what becomes the odds that somebody's going to, on the defensive side, is going to get that MVP award? Again, I think these guys do a pretty good job of these sorts of things. I didn't see anything in that listing that I thought really jumped out at me as crazy. And also, you remember, if the true money line of the game is -150, then you've got to massively devalue all of the chances that any of the Buccaneers are going to win that MVP award, since there's only a 40% chance they're going to win the game.
So what about the flip side to that? Like, let's say hypothetically you like Kansas City, Mahomes is +110. And any better value in that, do you think?
Well, I mean, that's pretty high. I mean, the questions are who else could win it. And the two obvious possibilities are Kelsey and Hill. So yeah, I think basically you've got Kansas City is a 60% chance to win the game, and Mahomes has a 50% chance of winning the MVP award. That's kind of a narrow margin in there. For everybody else on Kansas City. I don't know that that's too far off. I mean, that might be a better, an okay bet, but it's not an amazing bet.
I feel like this is an angle that gets brought up every year, and every year it makes sense to me what Nolan said is just kind of backing the quarterback for the MVP to get a little better price. That being said, I've never done it, and I'm not really all that tempted to do it. I agree with the defense too, although a lot of these defense numbers have been hit. It already looks like, I think I saw Shaq Barrett like 40-1 to win the MVP somewhere, which is ridiculous. I mean, this holds no predictive value, but we have seen defensive players win this before. I mean, last year, maybe if the 49ers hold on, they have a defensive player win it. The only other Buccaneers Super Bowl, I believe it was Dexter Jackson, right? I mean, what if someone happens to pick off Mahomes twice? They're going to be the talk of the Super Bowl. So one, I was thinking I might just throw down for fun. I think it's circa, at least yesterday, Carlton Davis was 175-1. If I'm not going to go with the quarterback, just thinking who's going to win, if I'm going to get involved with the MVP, I'm going to want a long payout. And it's not always wise, like Nick said, to use that kind of storyline and build your portfolio with that way of this is how I see the game going. But I think I would be much more inclined to take a long shot defensive player than one of these middle priced Buccaneers weapons on offense.
All right, gentlemen. Well, let's wind it down, shall we? And let's give we're going to each go down the row, and we're going to give our Super Bowl pick. Final score, you're going to pick obviously against the spread, the over-under. And if you have just one or two best bets on props, we'd sure appreciate it. And I'm going to get my notepad out because I think I've lost – how much money have I lost in the Super Bowl, Nick Christenson? It's astronomical.
Yeah, you don't – I mean, one in particular I recall slightly that was rather despondent. But, I don't think the audience could take that.
Yeah, it was brutal. Scott Wilson, are you ahead for Super Bowl betting over the course of your illustrious career as a sports bettor?
I believe so. Yeah, especially when I look at the ones that I hit money line, like, Tom Brady happened to be in the first one I hit, and that was 19 years ago or something. And they were 14.5 point dogs, and I took the money line. I'm definitely ahead on it for sure. But I'm liking in my head in the storyline, I'm seeing 27-24. And I'm seeing the MVP being Fournette for some reason. So I'm taking him at 29-1 or whatever I've got him at. But it's just sort of a force on the ground that makes the difference in this game. And that's where we're going.
Tampa wins, the game goes under, and Fournette runs for maybe $160 and catches 4 or 5 balls, scores 2 touchdowns, and that's your perfect game, Scott Wilson.
That's right. 2 touchdowns. And I think when you talk about the MVP, when you're talking about, Kansas City, if they happen to win it and it be one of the 2 gentlemen we talked about, if it's Kelsey or Hill, it's not a matter of it's going to be a matter of what they do after the catch to earn that, to take it away from Mahomes, right? If he gets them the ball, well, okay, they're going to credit him with that. But if they're breaking tackles left, right, and center, or Hill just streaks down the field as he's apt to do, then if it's a difference of that being the touchdowns or not, then you got to give it to him. But I'm sticking with the other side, Fournette and 27-24 Tampa Bay.
Nice. Case Keefer, again, everyone that's watching, go to the Las Vegas Sun. Case Keefer, great column on sports betting, not just Super Bowl props, but following the casino industry and everything Las Vegas. Case Keefer, throw us a bone, sir. What do we got?
Yeah, well, thanks so much, and I'll give you a sneak peek because my side column is coming out tomorrow. But I'll give you the same score, the same pick I had on that. I kind of already hinted at it, but I'm going to think positive thinking, kind of will it into existence. I'm looking for that middle, so I'm going to say I'm going to go with a high scoring Super Bowl. I'm going to say Chiefs 36, Buccaneers 35. So the Buccaneers cover, the Chiefs win outright. So an over too. I haven't actually bet the over because I think, statistically the number's about where it should be, but I just anecdotally, I feel like the Buccaneers defense hasn't been as good down the second half of the year. I still don't really trust the Chiefs. So I think we're going to see this go over, be back and forth. I think the Buccaneers get out to a lead. So maybe I'm going to be looking to short some of the Chiefs running backs. It's already kind of a quagmire there. So maybe look under Williams rushing. I think I've seen, sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me. So I'm not trying to be a tout and give bad numbers, but I think I've seen like maybe the upper, I can't remember, but under on the Chiefs rushing yards. I'm going to maybe go under on the longest field goal. I think 46.5. If we have some bad weather, if we have some winds, we've seen Bruce Arians get a little more aggressive. We know Andy Reid's a good coach. So I'm kind of wishful thinking there too, that this doesn't turn into a kicking fest because no one wants to see that. So that's a couple props I like. I'm going to go Buccaneers cover, Chiefs win their second Super Bowl outright.
Mr. Christenson.
Well, I mentioned earlier that my line came something like Chiefs -1 or -1.5, although not with a great deal of confidence. I already bet the +3.5 on that on the Bucks. So you can make your own margin based on that. When I did the numbers, my total came out 56.5. So I have absolutely no interest in that, where it started, where it's going, where it could plausibly end up. Wake me when it gets to, either 53.5 or 59.5. It's not going to happen. That's what I think the sort of game result is going to be from that side. Let me give you one more prop, though, that I do like. Number of players with a passing attempt under 2.5 -165. Who else is going to throw the ball? Brady doesn't have Edelman anymore to be that kind of weapon. And it's another one of those picks that's priced in the mid -100s. Telling the sharp folks that that the laying the money is probably the right side of that. So that's where I'm going to be, and that's the sort of game I'm sort of expecting.
You know who could throw the ball is the Canadian from Quebec, as I said. He was a quarterback in university up here. That he's a blocking tight end, but it could be a trick play there where he throws the ball.
I mean, that's conceivable, but has he done that in the pros so far?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll take the -165.
Even more tricky then.
Even more unexpected.
Even more unexpected would be Andy Reid, and we know when he was a kid, he had an arm.
All right, co-host, what do you say, Matt Lessinger?
So I mentioned that I'm kind of pro Cameron Braid in terms of props. The thing I've really been looking at is Brady's passing yards, which I saw at 301.5 on Bovada, and then the Westgate number was 290.5, and now Bovada doesn't even have a line on it anymore, which makes me feel like people are taking the under, and it also feels like the number is like tempting people to go over. I like the under on that. I do want to see a final number on it, but I'm thinking back to every Super Bowl that Brady was in with New England. I can't think of when he had any sort of decent running game, and now he has a decent running game. And the idea that he's going to throw for 300 yards, I'm not even trying to predict the game flow or whatever, whether he's coming from behind or whatnot. I think they're just going to rely more heavily on the run game no matter what. So I'm under on Brady's passing yards. I took the over 1.5 total interceptions in the game. Both of these teams, let me see if I got the numbers. Kansas City had 16 interceptions during the season. Tampa Bay had 15 interceptions during the season. So they were 5th and 7th. I think these are slightly underrated secondaries. So I like the over 1.5 interceptions. I like both quarterbacks to throw an interception. I think there might be a decent parlay on that. And that's really about it. I mean, in terms of the game, I was kind of leaning Kansas City, and now, fuck it. After listening to all you guys, I'm not going to touch the side. I'm really not.
This could easily be a Kansas City blowout. That would not shock me at all. That could happen. Again, it's sort of my computer spit out a number. You know, I've learned to trust the computer, but it's not always right.
Well, I mean, look, I was leaning Kansas City and under, and then Case goes and he's like, I like the over and I like Tampa, and I'm like, I'm just going to shut my mouth. You know, my opinion is worthless. So I'm going to just stick with the props and maybe look for some value in second half betting, you know, something like that.
I do want to make clear the over is not a play for me. Like Nick, I had it right around 56.5, so I'm not playing that. And I mean, Nolan keeps saying, give you a little taste. I actually wrote the exact words that kind of we just said. I said, anytime you bet against Patrick Mahomes, you have to be, you know, willing to feel really stupid really early. So I wasn't surprised with the Chiefs blowout either. I mean, it could happen, but I think statistically it's really hard to get to 3.5 in this game.
Well, I know I'm going to give you my long-awaited 2021 pick, and here's who I like. I like the I like the Toronto Blue Jays and the Toronto Maple Leafs in a parlay to both win their respective championships. And if I can somehow catch that parlay, I'll be even for my Super Bowl career, okay? Toronto and Toronto. That's who I got money on, because you know what? That's about as smart a bet as I could possibly make, given how much money I've lost the last – my first Super Bowl bet was Super Bowl V, Dallas playing Baltimore. Jim O'Brien, you son of a bitch, kicking a 32-year-old field goal. You broke my 8-year-old heart. I've been trying to get that dollar back ever since. Eventually, I'm going to get it back. Toronto Blue Jays, Toronto Maple Leafs. Go, baby. Let's wrap up the show. Anybody else have a final word before we cut it off?
Only that in that scenario, though, neither of those events would be played in Toronto. It'll be Tampa and Buffalo.
The ultimate sting of defeat.
I've got to say, I'm with you on at least one. I have a Maple Leafs future in my account. They haven't quite been as good as I thought they were going to be early in the year, at least analytically. But if the Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup, we can party together.
And you lived in Toronto, Nick.
Well, yeah, if the Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup, then I'm much more worried about what's going to happen to the apocalypse than I am worried about cashing that ticket. So they haven't won one since I've been alive, and I am not a kid.
No, 67.
I'll throw it to my co-host, who is usually with me on a show we call The Intelligent Conversation. We put a lot of forces here. Thanks to a lot of good information, a lot of fun. I'll throw it over to my sidekick here, Matt Lessinger, to take us out. Any final words, any final questions, Mr. L?
Not at all. I'm just going to second what you said. You put together a great panel today, and I am really just so happy that all you guys could join us and give us your picks. And this is going to be put up on YouTube so for eternity. So your picks have now been locked in. So I hope you're confident in what you picked. And listen, just thank you again. I hope we can strike up this band again. And certainly if the Maple Leafs make a run, invite me to that party, please.
Sounds good. See you again next time, guys. Thanks a lot. A lot of fun. We'll see you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the first pitch of Major League Baseball about 3 weeks away. Let's get back and do it again. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.